we're back. What's up, everybody? Benja Welldone, coming at you live this beautiful Corona-free day. I wonder how much longer I'm going to say that. But regardless, anyway. Today is Saturday, April the 24th at 9:23 in the morning. How are you doing? So, here's the thing. In between action and reaction, there's sort of like that lull moment. If you like throw a ball up in the air and it's collecting that energy and it sort of floats for like a second, before it comes back down. I'm not saying in a negative way. I'm just saying as far as gravity, plain and simple, right? Well, that's kind of where I'm at right now as far as my creativity and comedy goes, because I'm doing a lot of new writing, and I do something called pressure testing, whatever. Somebody else calls it something else. This is what I call it, which is basically getting rid of confirmation bias that something is funny to me and making sure that it is funny with someone else, with other people, etc., etc. It starts off small by talking about a topic, a premise, an idea, and then I get more granular, and then I just shake loose everything that doesn't work and keep what sticks. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I've been working on like a lot of new material having to do with me living in Russia, which I did do. Random, but true. To be honest with you, I don't got a whole lot going on right now. I don't like going to a comedy club and trying out new material that isn't vetted. I learned that lesson. I was out in Austin. There was, near Austin, Texas, there's probably about 800 people at the show. And I tried a lot of new stuff. First go round. And some hit and some missed. I know at a higher level, as a professional comedian, this is something that needs to be done. You're trying out new stuff on the road constantly. Well, at my level, or even in general, I feel like before you take something out on stage, it could be filtered out some way. If you say like a one-liner and a checkout line or something like that, or just like an interesting conversation that you don't let someone know it's going to be a joke. You just talk with them and just see what's there, And I feel like if you just sort of talk about a topic without actually saying the purpose, the reason you're talking about it, if you have a friend, they'll listen to you, they'll engage in conversation, and maybe something they'll say, you'll say, or combined, something funny will happen, something funny will arise. But if it's just completely in the water and stagnant and not moving, I'm pretty sure at that point you know that you can go on. That's what's so interesting about comedy is that, you could have an amazing voice, have an amazing writer, okay? And you could essentially have a hit between your beautiful voice and great lyrics and essentially just not ever even try it out. And it will, it will be a banger. It will be amazing. But unlike comedy, you literally have to build back. You have to build off of the feedback of something working. And that's something that I now harp on. I do constantly now. I go line by line, sentence by sentence, and I make sure everything that I'm saying is effective, so I'm not building off of a piece of shit, pardon my French. Right now I'm at the earliest stages of working out material. I'm still coming up with ideas. I'm still getting the dialogue down in between my writing, because basically like this, how you can if you ever done any sort of like creative writing, especially a dialogue between two individuals, enough of whatever language you speak to know when something just doesn't sound right, it doesn't sound conversational, it kind of sounds off, or maybe since you're the one that's going to be saying it, if it is something you would be saying, it's not coming out naturally the way you would say it. So generally I try to have things be said in the way that I would say it when I'm responding or saying something, and in the way that I know someone else would say it, or ideally that like a crowd would understand a concept or a premise. And it helps me a lot, not just also with the memorization, because I'm basically remembering verbatim, yes, but something close to stylistically how I would talk anyway. I feel like there's certain comedians that That's actually what's called your voice. Your voice as far as comedy goes. And it pretty much means stylistically what people think of when they come to see you before they even hear you speak a word. They know if they see this guy, if they see me or whichever individual, kind of an idea what you're going to get. For me, it's going to be a little bit aggressive. It's going to be very, and I'm not boasting myself. It's going to be unique. It's going to be something that will, not just the premise that will catch your attention, but I work very, very hard to have every single line in that, every single example, even the way that I move my actions to illustrate a story, because I feel like there's so many parts. Have you ever known someone, they can tell a really good story, and between the pitch of their voice and the way they move, and they're kind of like acting it out and they're going back and forth, all those elements, in my opinion, are important. Now, there are some people that are very still. There are some comedians that when they tell stories, they're all over the place, and they're kind of selling their actions. But me, I believe that in a lot of balance. I believe it's all important, and I feel like in the exact way you deliver communication, you have to deliver it in a way that the most amount of people can also receive it. So I try to add like a little ingredient of absolutely everything, between being very clear in my words, clear in my actions, my reactions, everything you could essentially imagine. But I've also gone as, I'm getting a little deep, but anyway, I've also gone as far as even like the subtleties and stuff, like those gaps of silence. All that stuff is needed, because in a normal conversation, it's not a speech. There's lulls of conversation. There's pauses. And typically, if you say something outlandish, like it's something just like off the wall crazy, they don't even respond. Just look at you like, you know? So, that's where I'm at right now. I'm in the creative process. It's like if there was a hump, like an arc, the top of the arc is basically like when everything is like perfect. And the bottom of the arc swinging up is like when I'm still figuring things out. I'm at that bottom of the arc, but I'm trying to work my way up, because I got all this new information about from when I lived in Russia, which, and to me, in my opinion, is very unique, because not that many individuals that haven't lived in Russia have lived in Russia. Now you could apply that concept to anybody, Mexico, et cetera, but country for country, Russia's not on the most visited tourist spots by any means. Okay. Yeah, I lived there. I studied there. I went to college, and in a very light way, someone made a small comment with more than likely no intended big reaction, but they had a small action, and they just made a comment that was a really, really unique, like 2 sentences that I had said about living in Russia. It was just like a small, quick little thing in this. I call it my introductory set, which is like a 10-minute set just about me, so the crowd gets to know me and stuff like that. And after a show, somebody said like, hey, like, that Russian stuff was really funny. And I was telling myself that I only said 2 sentences of it, and that's what they remember the most. So now I've taken each sentence and I've literally broken it up in about 10-minute segments. I got like 20 minutes that I'm working on. But again, it all comes down to not just my actions, not just my reactions, but it kind of starts off with the wording. And I'll say stuff to myself over and over and over and over again until I feel like if you do things through repetition, if you continue to do it and you continue to do it, after a while, subconsciously, you're sort of like self-correct things. It's really weird how problem solving works within you. Or at least that's just what happens for me. And I continue to say something over and over again to myself. And there's just something, there's like a weird point that just something doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. But when you're having the ideas with yourself and you don't have anybody to point it out, it's that much more challenging to really understand and to really pay attention to hear what's not correct when you're going through your own dialogue of 2 different individuals or more just by yourself. It's really complicated, but then again, it's extremely simple. And I'm not trying to digress or anything, but all I'm saying is that creatively, that's where I'm at right now. I am really, really excited to talk about this new stuff. But I'm purposely not booking shows until I get this down, because every show that I book, I want to leave a memorable, positive impression. And I'm not naming names, but you could do tons of shows and have half-assed material, and you'll be known as a half-assed comedian, or whatever it is that you might be, shooting some basketball, or going to the firing range and shooting some targets. And I'm a big believer in quality first. I've always, in my opinion, I've loved like the rapper, the artist, musician, whatever. That's two things: not just consistent, but also doesn't come out with material based off of a date because they feel like they're forced to. If something isn't ready for me, I'll hold off on it. But the thing is, here's what I'm getting at, if you're even listening up to this point. There's certain people, musicians, comedians, actors, whatever it may be, okay? Take a pick. That once a year, it's like they have to come out with a new hour of comedy, or once a year, they have to come out with a new album of music just to stay relevant. And some people can do one of two things with that premise, right? You could either A, understand that, accept that you want to do something once a year, okay, and it's not that quality, or B, you feel like there's a certain fire that's burning, which myself in this case, like I need to get something completed, okay, but it has to be good. So you work through that creative wall, having nothing stopping you, until you make your goal. And maybe you make it before, of course, that would be great. And there's two sides of that. I'd rather come out with something with positive pressure, making a diamond, something that's very like unique and beautiful and great and amazing, as opposed to doing multiple shows and getting well known, but not in a good positive light. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm doing essentially creatively. There's also those artists, comedians, actors, whatever, that are in very few films or make very few albums because maybe they don't have that fire pressure added. And without any criticism, they come out with great stuff, not naming names, but they're so infrequent with their material. Whenever they come out, it's always something great. But maybe one of two things. Again, maybe it takes them a long while to come up with something, or maybe they're just not pressuring themselves hard enough to come out with quality material. Because I don't stop about this. I love comedy. I'm so passionate about it. And I'm really excited. So, as always, this is you getting to know me just a little bit and what's going on, where I'm at. And hopefully, through this, like I said, you get to know me better. And when I'm out on stage, you'll know that it's some good shit. I do my testing, as I call it. I got different layers, but it kind of starts off within, and then it branches out to a close friend of mine. And then I'll take it to the streets, grocery store, gas station, one-liner here, one-liner there. Then I'll go to bus stations, and I'll do like 5 or 10 minutes of straight-up comedy at a bus station. It may sound crazy, but it works. And then when I take it onto the stage, if you see me on stage, which you will, you better know it's already worked out, it's vetted, and I come ready. I stay ready. So anyway, with that being mentioned, I love you all. Thank you for the support. It's a weird thing, and I wish that YouTube would also, in a weird way, show the amount of listeners that I have on all of these streaming platforms as opposed to YouTube, because YouTube is visual. And I get that, it's common sense, but I got a lot more listeners than I do viewers watching this, I guess, if that makes sense. So to everybody and in between, love you very much. All support. Benja Welldone, coming to a stage near you soon. Check me out. Peace.